In a world where bicycles meld abilities and uses and nobody knows what bike's for exactly what anymore, one bike, this bike, knows what it wants. The Pivot Firebird 29 wants rocks. It wants all of Mammoth Mountain's many, many rocks, and it wants them at speed.
I mean, it wasn't really the most well-versed bike of the bunch, but it sure did go downhill well.
That wasn't too big a surprise to me. I mean, the 27.5 Firebird that we tested was kind of a mini downhill bike.
Yeah.
I mean, it was indifferent, maybe dead feeling, the 27.5 one was.
Okay, yeah. I felt that too.
Yeah, and I was expecting this to be the same way.
It wasn't. I mean, I did have to speed up the controls on the Floatex 2 shock just to make it feel lively, but, you know, that shock has tons of adjustments, so you can kind of make it feel dead if you want. And, I mean, most of the adjustments I made to that shock were mostly open. And that's what allowed the bike to feel a little bit more playful, get it off the ground a bit, because it does naturally want to hug the ground, I feel like.
I rode it after you had set it up, Palmer, and I did notice that it was pretty lively, but it still really likes to soak up big hits. It's definitely a ground-hugging machine. If you're riding through chunder, bigger rocks, at medium to higher speed, this bike, it loves it. The more you hit them, the more it wants it. And I think part of that is it's got this stroke where it takes it in the beginning, but it definitely ramps up really late in its travel, but it still gives you that kind of progressive pop at the end of it that you can kind of bounce down the trail while still soaking it up.
Yeah, that might be true, but it feels nowhere near as poppy as bikes like the Da Vinci Spartan 2.9.
It's just much later in the stroke, so it isn't going to be something that you're just springing off of stuff, but you still have that sort of edge at the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, its main goal is, I think, to be more business-like than some of these other ones. And it took the best of what I liked about the 27.5 Firebird, of it being this really ready for anything downhill bike kind of a feel. I mean, you just look at how like thick the tubes are on it.
It's built like a downhill bike. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so much carbon on this thing. It's crazy.
And what really reels that in a little bit is, for one thing, the way we were able to tune the shocks for it to be a little more lively, and also it's got these pretty short chainstays, one of the shortest in the bunch, which itself is thanks in part to Super Boost, which itself is thanks in part to Chris Kokalis of Pivot Bikes.
Yeah, and I mean, Super Boost is a little bit of a pain in the neck because there's not a lot of compatibility out there. You can't just throw a different set of wheels on it. At this point, maybe a couple years from now, there will be more options, but you know, it does provide room for certain things that we like.
Which we also saw that on the Da Vinci, kind of second shortest chainstays in the group, also a Super Boost bike, allowing for decent clearance, really short stay.
Of course, neither of which were we able to test with the stock cranks because it's a special crank to work with Super Boost.
Yeah.
They're just happening right now. So you have to realize, if you're going to get the benefits of Super Boost, just like everything else that we're getting trained to get used to in the industry, there's going to be some of the parts that are going to have to come along with it.
Which makes us wonder about value. This is not an inexpensive bike. You've got carbon wheel set, Floatex 2 factory, 36 with the Grip 2 damper, but that's still a lot of money. Did you guys have an opinion on that?
And just be said, this is their top end build. Pivot, I think, should get some credit for not offering any not worthwhile bike builds.
It's
Like,
true.
Yeah, like
They
none of
always like put suspension first, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So if you want this experience, what we all talked about of what makes this bike unique, and you don't want to spend over $8,000, there's one in that $5,000 range. So it's still there's more options than just
It's
this
achievable,
bike. Yeah.
or more achievable.
What did you guys think about climbing? I kind of felt like like it's a DW Link bike, which I feel has really good pedal efficiency.
I definitely felt that was something where it's almost as though I was skimming more on the top of the stroke as I was pedaling along. I was getting some bobs, but I wasn't really sinking in. Even if I was not doing the best job of a really smooth pedal stroke, it still wouldn't dive too much. So I was able to leave it open a lot of the time, especially on our more traversy single track climb. When it got really steep, I definitely had to reach down for that climb switch, but there wasn't a bike in this test that I didn't have to throw that switch.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a DW Link bike. It should be efficient everywhere. And I mean, when you got it on the steep stuff, it just stopped being that efficient. And I think it was because the seat angle is pretty slack for a bike that just came out.
Yep, this is happening right now. At Marquette's Fall 2017 Bible, we praised the Santa Cruz Nomad's 74.5 degree seat angle. Here, we're calling 74.5 degrees slack. But most brands' seat angles have steepened, and yes, it makes a real perceivable difference.
I kept making comparisons between this bike and the YT Capra. I mean, not just on the climbs, the downhills too. They're kind of similarly bruisery bikes. The YT has a 76 and a half if you put it in the high position seat angle. And that kind of brings up this advanced linkage like what the Pivot has versus advanced geometry like the YT. And I didn't have much of a problem with the YT, but I will admit that you really had to pedal very perfectly and circularly for it to work well. This one you could pedal however you wanted until you got to the steep stuff.
I mean, I like a bike that pedals efficiently. I usually would take a bike that's kinematically better than something that's not, but I don't like the way this bike climbed up steep stuff. It was a wheelie machine, and you know, so that it was there's the sacrifice there, you know. But this bike, what it's really great at is going downhill, and for that, like, it's pretty tough to beat. I mean, it's a big bruiser that's excellent at that, and that's what it does well. Maybe you sacrifice a little bit on the climbs, you know.
The Firebird 29 isn't Pivot's answer to a trail bike with enhanced capability. For that, look to the Switchblade. For something that won't hold you back in the descents, regardless of how rugged or fast, look to the Firebird 29. It shines when sight lines are blurred by speed and rocks, and it isn't ashamed about its intentions. There's more in the full review and more roundtable videos at bikemag.com.